Councilmember King, welcome to Voters Organize. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about why you are running to continue to represent people like me and Lydia in District C.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm running because I really enjoy every day trying to make the city that I grew up in, the city that I decided to start my family, raise my family in, and the city that I live in a better place. I am, again, like I said, born and raised in this city, grew up in this city. I've seen the highs, I've seen the lows, and I believe that I can make a difference, and I believe that I have done things individually and along with my colleagues to make this city better than we found it 4 years ago. And I enjoy doing that, and I enjoy really have a passion for giving back to our youth, helping our kids grow up in a city that I think can be better for them. I believe if you have people just always saying what is wrong, you don't get any progress. So instead of just standing on the sidelines saying what is wrong, this is my way of getting involved.
Great, thank you.
We're going to start with just kind of the basics. Residents cite trash, lighting, sidewalks, flooding, illegal dumping in Algiers, ferry reliability, and bus frequency. What's your 90-day plan for visible fixes and a public schedule?
Well, the 90-day plan that I have, not so much 90-day, just a plan from the very beginning throughout the term is to, one, eliminate illegal dumping. So I'm not just talking about doing it, we have a plan in place with illegal dumping with our neighboring parish, neighboring city of Gretna. They're already building a transfer station that's a dump site, basically, where a controlled dump site that's going to be located in the city of Gretna on the Algiers-Gretna borderline, and that's going to be used for free for all Algiers residents. So instead of going behind a building at night, you can just, any time of the day for free, dump right there in Algiers. Trash pickup, reliable trash pickup, that is a duty of the mayor. Not trying to pass a buck, but the mayor's office negotiates a trash contract, often without much input from the council. So wherever I am needed or can help, I will. Everyone wants to daily week trash pickup. I think it's a bit irresponsible to promise that when technically that is a negotiation tool of the mayor, not tool, but just something negotiated by the mayor. Sidewalks and streets and flooding, that goes along with infrastructure. And one thing I make a point not to do is give false promises or say I'm going to fix this and I know I can't. It just sounds good, but I know that if it could have been done, it would have been done many council members before, or many years before. But one thing that can improve infrastructure, sidewalks, streets, flooding, is this bond fund coming up on a ballot in November. And I am going to support it. It's going to be about $500 million, and roughly half of that's going to go to our streets. And I was in a meeting last night with with DPW's department leader, along with members of the Algiers President's Council, talking about making sure Algiers, and not just Algiers, but the entire district, but we were in Algiers last night, but making sure that Algiers gets its fair share of that money, looking at streets that are heavily traveled by everyone, not just a street in one neighborhood. So like we were talking about Tullis Drive, probably the third busiest street, third biggest throughway or street in Algiers, but it's probably the worst condition of any street. Making sure that street is fixed, because it's a street that a lot of people, thousands of people would use if it was properly maintained. So I don't want to say that's going to be a 90-day fix, because haste makes waste, but definitely within my first 90 days of re-election, making sure that once that bond fund is passed, or if it's passed, making sure that with community involvement, we identify streets on both East and West Bank that need to be fixed, identify sidewalks that need to be fixed, and identify places that have a lot of flooding that also needs to be fixed as well.
Great. So I'm going to switch over to short-term rentals. I
Mhm.
live in Algiers Point.
Okay.
This is definitely what has been an issue for us, and you've talked a lot about, enforcement and closing loopholes. What would you say your kind of 12-month enforcement plan is, both in the quarter and in Algiers, and how will you show us, like, how will we know as residents that it's working?
Well, it's funny you said the quarter. So the short-term rentals are legal in the quarter, but we all know it still happens there.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we can kind of kid ourselves just by saying something's illegal that it's not happening. Enforcement is the key. Enforcement is the key, and that's beefing up our safety and permits department as it relates to short-term rentals. That specific department, we often get emails saying, "Hey, this is an illegal STR happening here. There's a legal one happening there." Making sure that gets to the right person as soon as possible. I even go out and take pictures and talk to neighbors to get the evidence to submit that to safety and permits. But enforcement is the key to short-term rentals. Now, we had the 1 per square block with the up to 2 exception, and that's something that I fought for because short-term rentals is complicated. It's a bit tricky. We had a meeting and half the room were against short-term rentals. I think it was more against whole homes when you really boil it down. I don't know. There are people, but I don't think there are people who are solely against the idea of short-term rentals. But making sure that you live in that house, making sure that if you do get a short-term rental exception or one through the lottery, that you're a good neighbor, making sure your tenants or your guests respect the neighborhood, and making sure if someone runs afoul to that the residents feel comfortable enough saying, "Hey, XYZ, this is what's happening in my neighborhood, on my block. They were granted a short-term rental, but they're not being good actors, so we ask that you revoke it or do what the council has to do." And we've been doing that. We've revoked short-term rentals. We have not approved applications because of community input. And I think once you have that community input, that's a good way to start the enforcement. That's a good way to help with enforcement, or even not even need enforcement because you stop it before it even starts. But it's a complicated issue. A lot of people have strong feelings. I don't think they're bad in the vacuum, but like anything, once abused and not properly used, it definitely can do more harm than good.
Great, thank you.
We're gonna shift over to utilities. Obviously, people in New Orleans know of the struggle of dealing with utilities, with energy, with sewage and water board, changing rates. What near-term accountability tool will you use with energy and sewage and water board, such as performance standards or penalties or rate case conditions?
I think performance standards are needed. So with sewage and water board, we have the smart meters that is helping to keep these out of control bills in line. But when people say accountability, I like the common thing to say is, I'm going to make sure the bills are lower, and I'm going to do this. But we have people with the PSC, and we have attorneys with Denton, and we have a curator office to make sure that to help the council regulate the bills and make sure everything is in line. But what I like to focus on more is just the everyday customer service. When sewage and water board, not so much entity, but sewage and water board, DPW, go out and fix a problem, or they get a call about something being fixed or need to be fixed, let's say a pothole or a leaking pipe or a messed up drain. You timely go out there and you fix it. But more importantly, you fix it and you repair it better than you found it. I think if we do things and this is how I am, if I leave something better than I found it, that makes the entire situation better. So too often we have DPW be sewage and water board to fix a street or repair a pothole, and you put an orange cone there with some gravel or some sand, or just do a subpar job, and that leads to worse conditions because now the street is more messed up, and that pothole is bigger, and that pipe is easily more easily accessible, and now the pipe is broken. But if you dig up a hole, you fix a pipe, I met with the DPW, not DPW, Sewage and Water Board's new director to say, here are pictures, here are emails that I have of your department, what department you have now, going in and leaving something worse than they found it. And that erodes people's confidence in everything else because that's their main interaction with those utility companies. So when they see a subpar job here, you've already lost their confidence when it comes to my bill not being right. It may be the customer's issue or the customer's fault. It may be, but they already have a bad taste in their mouth from this simple street not being properly fixed. Or have a leaning power line or a leaning power pole, and I've been calling for months and it's still there. So when I get that bill that's I may think is inaccurate, I have no confidence that you're going to fix it or that it is not your fault because I'm just looking at what you do when I see you every day. So I'm a big believer in the small things. That you do the small things right, that the big things will take care of themselves, or small problems turn into big problems. So when I hear accountability, I like to go literally on the ground, boots on the ground, and say, look, let's work with getting the small things right, the everyday things. You dug a pothole, you dug a hole to fix an issue. Let's make sure that you leave that better than you found it.
My follow-up question is, can you name kind of one concrete deliverable you'll bring to District C related to utilities and bills?
Yeah, that's a good one. A concrete deliverable that we can bring to District C. I would say one being we have Delta. They're new, making them more accessible on a small things, paying their bills, have people have access to pay their bills. I believe in a face-to-face, so we're already setting up a meeting with the leadership from Delta, from Sewage and Water Board, the new people, so they can see this is not just a customer service reps. These are the top people. I met with the top person with Delta, top person for Sewage and Water Board. So I would say one deliverable is just making people aware of who are the top people, and you can have access to not just me, but to the people who are making the decisions. So the people on the 9 to 5, the mom and dad's ripping and running, doing their everyday work, you have access to that person who's making those decisions. So I think that's one deliverable that we can say that I will end up in the process of doing, just bringing that connectivity.
Thank you.
Great. So utilities are high. We're not getting a lot of the services that we pay for, but that's also connected to rising costs in housing.
Yes.
And so I moved to Algiers Point 11 or 12 years ago from the East Bank because the East Bank was too expensive.
Yes.
And I'm seeing a lot of neighbors having to leave because they're getting priced out of someplace that they lived. Folks who are residents who have been there for a really long time are unable to continue to live in Algiers. What are 2 actions that you'll take if you're elected in the next term, and how will you fund and measure them so that families aren't getting priced out of the neighborhood?
That's a multi-layered question with a lot of different issues. So one, the price of everything is going up, except for the price of people, the amount of people are getting paid. Now, I would love to say, hey, I can give everybody a raise. Minimum wage is a state issue. I would love to have everyone's at a minimum salary get raised. So I would say, what can we focus on as a council and as a community, and not rely on federal government or state government. So one thing when you talk about, let me bring it back just a bit, with people think one reason, I know one reason a lot of people lose their homes is just they don't understand um, successions. They don't understand wills. Now, it kind of all ties in. So, I gave this example before, and I've seen this even in my own home, or my own family, I should say. When your grandparent passes away, a succession is not done. A will is not done. Okay. Now, that's your grandmother. Then 5 years later, your grandfather passes away. A succession is not done. A will is not done. And they all have, let's say there's 4 kids, and 2 of those kids pass away. So now you have 20 or so heirs to this property. No one really knows who owns it. The family members say, well, you stay there, I'm not paying the taxes, I'm not paying the bills, I'm not, and eventually the property is lost. Whether that it sells, a property tax, or a sheriff's auction, the properties, a tax sale or a sheriff's auction, the property is lost. That is a way that a lot of people in this city, primarily black people in the city, have lost their property throughout the years. So I think one thing we can do is educate people on the importance of a will, the importance of succession, just really estate planning. And we've done that. I've done that in my personal capacity as an attorney, going to different churches, going to different communities, and doing wills for free, doing successions just at the cost. It costs to do a succession, because once you now have that property properly in the right, donated to the right person, then you have ownership, and now you know what's yours, and you're not going to lose at a sale. So that's just one thing I think is often overlooked, just a small educational piece of knowing how to properly pass something down so it's not lost. So that's just one thing. But the bigger question is, how do we make the cost of living less or cheaper in our community if we can't increase the money that a person can get paid? That is a tough question. I don't pretend to have the magic wand to solve that answer. I think getting people better quality jobs, giving people access to jobs. So one thing I can say that I've done is, even with the help of Vote, we had a job fair, and we went straight to the community that needed that job fair. We was on the streets trying to connect people with quality paying jobs. I believe we should start early in our school system with educating our children, not just, they say book smarts, but giving them the trades that they need to be that welder, that plumber, that electrician, that pays a good wage, that pays a good salary, so they can have money to keep up the house that was properly donated to them, or say, you know what, I lived on the East Bank, now I want to move to Algiers Point, or vice versa, but now I have the skills along with the job to pay those bills. So it's a lot of issues with costs going up, money's not matching, your salary's not matching the cost, or just once again knowing how to properly donate that property that you would inherit. But it's nonetheless, it's a big issue that will not just take the council, won't just take any elected officials. It'll be our school system, our parents, just our community as a whole, trying to figure out that problem.
Great, thank you.
I have a follow-up question to that, actually. Related to creating more affordable housing developments, there was recently a affordable housing development that was canceled in English. It was scheduled to be an English turn. And it's, put us potentially in the crosshairs with HUD and investigation of the Fair Housing Act. Like, do you know why that development was canceled?
Sure. So that's in litigation right now. There's a lot of pieces to that. So I'll try to be succinct as possible and not add to not jeopardize litigation. So that started off as a luxury condo. Okay, I think it's important to have all the facts, and I just want to present all the facts, not sway an opinion. Present the facts. And I'm not repeating I'm not saying anything that I didn't say at a council meeting. That was presented to the community of Lower Coast, not just English Turn. I think people try to lump it to English Turn because that's the nearest, actually not even the nearest subdivision. That's one subdivision that's closer to, but all of Lower Coast is affected by this. So it was started off as luxury condos. Okay, that's a fact. That developer went to the community, the Lower Coast community, and presented this luxury condo apartments, saying you can downsize from English Turner to Arbors, or if you before you go to English Turner to Arbors, you can move here. Luxury style condos. Community said no, it's just too dense. That's it. Infrastructure can't support it, it's just too dense. Well, that developer repackaged the idea and said, okay, now I want to do luxury, I want to do affordable housing. In my opinion, I haven't talked to the developers, so I don't want to say this is what's in their mind. You get more attention when you say, I want to do affordable housing. That individual and their team brought that idea again to the Lower Coast community, and everywhere from all along 406, which is a couple of miles, people said still simply too dense. The infrastructure currently doesn't support it. There's no bus line. There's no grocery store. There's no school. There's the closest everything is in Plaquemine Parish. That's just a fact. So the developer, again, and their team started saying the council doesn't want affordable housing. And I can tell you exactly how that's not the case. Because right across the street, directly across the street, I approved affordable housing. We had to do some rezoning to make the lots, I think, smaller or bigger. I forget exactly which one, to allow affordable housing. And a developer right now is building and has built multiple homes, single family homes, that he made it very clear this will be affordable housing. There was no pushback from not one resident in Lower Coast, Algiers. But when you, in my opinion, when they were first turned down for the luxury condos, how can I now continue to make my money? I'm going to say low income housing. And when I get pushback, I can now, anybody can sue for anything, but it's easier to get in court to say this is why they can sue. This is why I didn't get what I want. So those are the facts. To the best of my knowledge, it was never against affordable housing. It's about if the city says, which the city did say, we want every person to be within a 10-minute walk of a park. Well, the closest park, again, is in Bellchase, and it's on a very narrow street with no sidewalks because half the street is in Bellchase. It's about an hour walk. I don't think that helps anybody. If you want to put people, affordable housing for our most disenfranchised community, I don't think putting them somewhere where there is no bus line is helpful to them. If a food desert is a mile without, I think the closest grocery store, the closest fresh food place is a mile, putting them where at least the closest grocery store is 2 miles, again, in Bellchase, is helpful to them. Grocery store, pharmacy, hospital. Even NOPD mentioned if you add 300 units and you can multiply and figure out how many people that would be a strain on an already strained department or district going that far out to answer service calls. So one, it never was affordable. Issue about we approve affordable housing across the street. It was all about the proper fit with density and the current infrastructure that's either there or not there. It's just unfortunate, in my opinion, that this developer realized I can get a lot of attention and get really some sympathy if I say this is affordable, and the council is not allowing affordable housing. Look, I approve affordable housing. I'll help move forward affordable housing throughout the district, East Bank and West Bank. The council throughout the city approves projects and not approved projects. This is one that just didn't get approved because it match with over 1,000 people. Another thing, they had over 1,000 signatures, hand signatures, not a template email, hand signatures from Lower Coast Algiers residents. And there was not one property owner who said, I agree with this. And that's a very diverse community. You have black, white, you have people who live, but there's no neighbors, or like just a very rural, you think you were in like Oklahoma. So, you know, and they all said, we don't mind affordable housing. Just this heavily densely populated structure, whether it's affordable, whether it's condos, just doesn't fit here. And I would say, as far as the HUD piece, well, to my knowledge, the city hasn't applied for anything, so you can't get turned down for what you don't apply for. And two, if we just cave in every time somebody threatens to sue or sue, then how would the city look in the future? Now, that's the last thing I say about this. I had a developer mention, you know, if I don't get, and it didn't happen, but just the mindset that this is starting to be a part of, what's the right word I want to say, a part of the process. If I don't get what I want, then I'm going to say discrimination for affordable housing, and I'm going to force you to do it. And I don't think that's, as a leader, we should just cave in when we're threatened because we're doing our job, which is listening to our constituents.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks. Going actually to my third question now. Thank you for giving us that. Will you tie jail funding to public dashboards, independent audits, and staffing or healthcare benchmarks, and support pausing expansion if those benchmarks aren't met?
Yeah, I was against the jail expansion. I think most of the council was, all of the council was against that. So anything to make that more transparent, public benchmarks, public dashboards. I don't believe we have enough need right now in the city. And anything that takes away of that need of increasing our recreation departments, increasing our infrastructure, increasing the budget of our recreation department, increasing the budget of our infrastructure, increasing the budget of our mental health, not department, but those services. Anything that takes away from that takes away from the betterment of the city. And I believe that increasing the jail, building additions to the jail takes away from all of that. So not for it, and whatever we can do to make that whole process more transparent. All that you said, I'm for it, absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Great. So I have a question about mobility and safe streets. Residents in the quarter want safer crossing in the French Quarter. Algiers bike lanes have been we have them, we don't have them, we want them, we don't want them. Just in terms of, folks kind of getting around. If you're reelected, what are your first year commitments to making sure that there are safer crossings, that bike lanes are accessible and safe, and how will you fund and measure those programs?
Well, my commitment would be, I hate to keep sounding like a broken record, but doing what I've been doing, and that is listening to those in those communities who are affected. So let's talk about the French Quarter. They want safer crossings. There's also talk about pedestrianizing, making the quarter less or more bike, car, pedestrian friendly. Haven't talked to every member of every resident of French Quarter, but it seems to be a lot of people in the quarter saying, we like a type of hybrid system where we have access with our vehicles, but at certain times of the day or certain events make it more pedestrian friendly. So I think just coming in there saying it's going to be this and take it or leave it is a bad way to look at it, because those people most affected should have the loudest say so, or their voices should not be just ignored. I know people who live on Bourbon. People don't realize that Bourbon is also a residential street. They're like, look, if you make this all pedestrian, you're going to destroy my way of living. Like, how can I get my groceries? I'm a 80-plus-year-old resident of the quarter. I can't walk 3 blocks with groceries. How do you expect me to do that? I know they have businesses who say, if you make this all pedestrian friendly, or not pedestrian friendly, but limit the vehicle traffic, we can't make deliveries. We can't receive deliveries. So I think it's important to listen to the residents and the businesses in the quarter. From what I've been hearing, understand the need for pedestrian safety, but are not for making it all pedestrian only. The crosswalks, that's an issue. We need more enforcement, and I know that's not always a good word to say, but when you have people parking, they call it the 7. It's like a yellow triangle on the corner of people just park their car. Now that makes it dangerous for pedestrians walking, makes it dangerous for everybody. Now service vehicles or fire trucks can't make that turn. We need more enforcement, and that, again, that's always sound good, but in this case, if you don't have it, you can have a more, you open yourself up for a potential severe accident or a situation where we had to get to this burning XYZ where we could, because we had 4 cars illegally parked at the crosswalk. So that's one thing. Listening to the community and those most affected. Now you mentioned bike lanes, and that is something that is not new. It's not new. So going back roughly 4-5 years ago, there were bike lanes installed in Algiers, and there was very little input from the community. And I think that's the reason why there was so much pushback, because a lot of people said, I went to bed on a Friday, well, went to bed on a Monday, woke up Sunday, went to bed on a Sunday, woke up Monday, and bike lanes are being installed in front of my house or in front of my business. I didn't get an email, I didn't get a phone call, I didn't get a door hanger, I didn't get any notification, and that's not how government's supposed to work. So a lot of people in the Aurora area and along Newton said, look, we don't mind bike lanes, but this and the process is totally out of line. The construction of it, the configuration of it, the lack of notice, we don't want them here. And I represent those individuals who said, we don't want this in our neighborhood. Now, we're not telling you how to govern or regulate other parts of the district that want it, but here, we don't want this particular configuration. Give us something. We told DPW that. Give us something that works with the community. I'm not a bike lane expert or engineer, but hey, draw something up that works for the community, and we'll bring it to them, and we can have a compromise. But we never got that. It was like, okay, we're done here. On the East Bank, it's very important to realize that is a more of a biker friendly, or I should say friendly, but a more the streets have more sick bicyclists. St. Claude being the main one, and we didn't just start this work trying to make that safer. I personally have sat in meetings with groups like Bike Easy and DOTD's leadership. We sat in meetings in the conference room at City Hall years ago. There's correspondence going back saying, hey, what's the next step? It's just unfortunate that this issue has been highlighted by the recent incidents on St. Claude. But from the very beginning, we taking bike rides on that street, realizing how dangerous it is. We had those meetings. We demanded things get done. And we had that meeting about a month ago, and DOT said the same thing then that they said years ago. St. Claude is also known as State Highway 46. It's a state street. Very little is going to get done without a study, without DOTD's approval, equipment. The city has very limited jurisdiction over this. They can do some things, but putting a bike lane, that's going to be our call, and that's going to be determined by our study. And that's the same information we got before. It's just unfortunate, around in this season we're in now, things kind of get blown out of proportion, misinformation gets out there, but nothing new has started. That That study is going to be about $500,000 study, and it can cost up to $30 million to install the type of bike lanes that's needed. Um, I did speak to Scott Boyle, Mr. Scott Boyle. He's like the regional director of this area. He said we will do some interim changes. It may not be what's desired by the people who cycle on St. Claude, but we realize how dangerous it is, and we will do some interim changes. Excuse me, we'll do some interim changes to make it safer. Now the cause, again, it's going to be state cause. It's going to be a state-funded project, it's a state highway, so that's going to really have to be a lift by our state legislators, our state rep, our state senators, who are all on board. But I don't want to, just because it's a sensitive issue and that it's a hot topic and it's election time, give like false information or just false. I don't want to lie and make and say what people want to hear. I will do what I can as a city leader, and that is push and ask and force the state, not force, but push them to do what they can as soon as possible and work with our state legislators to make sure we can get the funds needed to make that happen as soon as possible.
I have a follow-up question to that, because it's happened in a couple of the answers that you've given around things that are not the role of city council, might be the mayor, it's not the state, and lots of references to like different agencies. And I think one of the challenges for anybody being a council person or just in politics is that a lot of our folks don't understand how government works. So what do you think can be done in terms of communication and education from your perspective around any of these issues? Because a lot of kind of what I'm hearing, and you've been in this seat now for 3.5 years, and so what would you say about really engaging community so that they understand where the pressure point is, right? They might not know to go to their state legislator for a better bike lane, right? And so there seems to be a lot of folks talking over each other for lack of understanding whose role is what. And so what would you kind of like to help us as residents of District C?
Look, I'm learning. I've learned. Excuse me. So I wanted to say, when I first got into city government, I worked as a legislative aide for a council member, and I thought everything was funneled through the council. I didn't know. I'm somebody with multiple degrees, and I just didn't know. So I just think that the way our city government is set up, everything's a city council. Like my parents to this day, like, hey, why didn't you fix this? I'm like, that's not. I don't want to say that's not my job, but I don't have the ability to go out and correct that issue. So it's not just I think a lot of people have that issue, but I believe in one, just being honest and never saying it's not my job. I'm the council member, so if it's not my job to directly fix it, it is my job to figure out who can fix it and let them know what the situation is. But one, being honest, and you have to be able to tell somebody the truth, but with respect, so that they don't feel like you're just passing the buck. You don't feel like you're just passing their issue on to the next person. Although the city council has limited, I'll talk about the state highway on General de Gaulle. At Wall and de Gaulle, there are crashes every week.
Yep.
I've seen a lady literally get hit in her vehicle and had to crawl out because the airbags apart. She was sideways. It was crazy. That's not a city highway. City has no control over that. I can't tell constituents. It's not my job. Not my problem. You call this person. That's not what a leader would do. So I've had meetings with DOTD against Scott Ball, brought the news camera out there, even if that makes me look like hey, this is an issue, you should fix it. I'm still gonna bring the news out there, and bring attention to it, and really fight to get that fixed. So as a result, many years of fighting, although again the Gaulle and Wall is not a state, not a city, it's state. A study has been done. There are plans to fix that highway or that part of the Gaulle, make it safer. So again, not my job, but it is my job. And I just think talking to residents when they call and they say, get this fixed right away, I tell them the process so they understand while it's not as easy as I thought it was or how it's made out to be. There are certain processes, there are certain steps, there are different departments, different branches of government, different levels of government, but we're all learning, and I'm learning every day, and I have no problem with explaining how stuff works. I don't know how everything works on the federal level or on the state level, so I'm never too proud to say I know it all or I don't know something. Just continue to let people know how things work in a respectful way that I would want to have something explained to me. But I don't want to sound like I'm passing the buck when I say the mayor, does the contracts with the trash, or the state has this highway. Just letting putting information out there, and doing what I can to connect the dots to to resolve the issue.
Great, thank you for that.
Going back to the jail,
Okay.
talking about their medical care, will you fully fund medical assisted treatment and create a public oversight board, including people with lived experience, to monitor that jail's medical contractor? And how will you guarantee that continuity of care at release?
Well, I would love to do that. I think having people who've experienced that is the best way to make sure that what is getting done is getting done. So the first part of that question, I definitely support that. It was kind of a compound question. So what's the second part?
How will you guarantee a continuity of care for folks after they get released for their medical treatment, medical care?
That's a good one. You will have to get buy-in from the individuals who are released. That's a big part. You can't force somebody to continue to get treated. Get buy-in from that individual, and through this is important. You need to keep that care. That's how you see so many people in situations without that care. I don't know. Get them to buy in for sure. And whatever I can as a counsel, as a person, to make sure that the other side is meeting that person where they are. You got to have the individual has to buy in. You have to have the caregivers to buy in to make sure that that individual is getting the proper health care, mental health care. Because I can tell you, as a result, that's how you see a lot of homeless issues or drug issues, and people self-medicate. So it's not an issue that only affects a small population. It affects everybody. So however that's getting our health department involved, outside services involved, but it's something that definitely needs to be done.
Thanks.
Great. So I'm gonna connect it a little bit right into things that make us happy, healthy, whole, and prosperous. Let's talk about youth investment for a minute. I heard you say earlier to Lydia's question that you wanted to increase the NORD budget. I've also heard you say at other meetings, like, there are lots of things for kids to do, and I would agree that NORD's budget has to kind of really focus on certain areas, and some parks and have lots and lots of programs, but that's not necessarily true for everybody. And it's really important that kids get access to activities, things that inspire them. I heard you earlier talk a little bit about education that leads to workforce. Will you commit to a citywide summer expansion, including like jobs, late night recreation, literacy, big issue, mentorship, free pools that reach both sides of the river? And could you name 3 deliverables District C will see by next summer? So first part, kind of a commitment to more programs for kids.
Yes, definitely commitment to more programs for kids. I have hired every summer multiple kids to work in my office. Some paid, some not paid. Some of those have turned into full-time jobs in my office. So I'm not just talking. I definitely believe in that. That's really my big passion, helping out with kids. So the answer to that first question is yes. And what was the other?
The second part is kind of 3 deliverables for each part of, for all of District C that you could name by next summer, like 3 kind of deliverables in youth investment, whether that's through NORD or other opportunities for our district.
Don't have to wait to next summer, I can tell you right now, $15 million has been invested in recreations in District C. You have a full 7 feet indoor swimming pool that has never had, the Algiers has never had. That doesn't just service Algiers, it services the entire city. Not just kids, it service, my mom goes there every day, almost every day, weekly, to do her water aerobics. We have Skelly Road Baseball Stadium that's sat vacant for 20 years, and now high schools, Landry, Carr, Noma, they have a place to have a home for baseball. They're not always traveling. That's also to the home of Xavier University, right across the street. Xavier University's men's baseball team is there. So not waiting until next year to say what we're going to do. Every year since I've been in office, I've given out scholarships during Essence Fest. We give out a scholarship to a student who has graduated, a local high school student who has went to college and graduated, or is about to graduate. Because too often, when you finish college, you get the pass on the back, the hand claps. When you finish high school, you get the pass on the back. But when you're in school, you're forgotten about. So every year for Essence Fest, we've given out scholarships. Every year for Bayou Classic, we've given out scholarships to a Southern University Law Center, my alma mater, and a Grambling State University student who is either about to graduate or still in school, just to let them know, hey, haven't forgot about you. Although you're kind of in that spot where people tend to forget about you, we haven't forgotten about you. So investing in kids, those milestones, those achievements are things that I've done from the very beginning.
Great, thanks.
Moving on to surveillance and civil liberties, particularly in the quarter, with camera use this year. With heavy camera use in the quarter, where do you stand on facial recognition, predictive tools, and broad LPR networks?
Well, I'm not in favor of expanding what we have right now. I think with the council putting up guardrails is we're fine there. I know it's a sensitive subject. I know that the surveillance technology is discriminatory against people of dark skin, like myself. I definitely understand that, so we definitely have to have those guardrails, and I would not want it used as evidence at a trial. Now, if it helps solve a crime, that's one thing. But to say this facial recognition technology saw Freddie King, so that's why we arrested him, I think that's dangerous because we see his flaw. But I also want to make it clear that it has helped solve crimes. It has helped prevent crimes. One of the most recent situations, as a parent, it was alarming to me to hear about a child being sexually trafficked from Florida, and facial recognition helped catch his trafficker while in the process of trafficking. So in that situation, and the situation where it helped catch at least one inmate that escaped, we see that it was helpful preventing further crimes. That's a fact. So the question is, like we do often on the council, or just often in life, how do you find that medium? How do you have that compromise? What is the right balance? I think now we have it where it's not perfect, but we're in the right direction. Whereas I don't know, last I checked, no one's convicted by facial recognition. Like, it led to no convictions. But we did see it led to safer conditions for at least those individuals in those situations where the kids are being trafficked and they escape guy from the jail. So don't want to expand it, but realize that used correctly, it may help prevent crimes from happening.
How would you ensure that enforcement, that NOPD isn't using it out of the lanes in which you have set forth?
Well, you would have to have regular and trust them. I know that's difficult, but you can only, if they trust them and have them bring forth, look, how many times have you used it? How many times did it lead to an arrest? How many times did it lead to a conviction? Now, the last I checked, it had led to some arrests, but no convictions. And you look at that data and make sure that it's not being abused. And I think that's the best. Now, there may be more to do from there, but I think that's a start. Yeah.
Thanks.
So continuing on around safety, I want to talk about community safety, not NOPD and policing, but there are successful community-based programming that you can do within District C. And so what community-led safety programs will you scale first in District C? And then you're just talking about data, like what data will you use to measure if they're successful, whether that's a reduction in shootings, reduction in or increase in mediations, or youth retention that you can publish for us as a community so we know that it's working and can support it.
I think we have a snapshot of that right now. So when I first came in office, it was my idea, I'm not patting myself on the back, just speaking facts, to have the culture grants. Each councilman gets $1 million, and you give it to nonprofits. So since that, I think it's correlation, since that has started, crime has come down. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but crime has come down. And I believe because we are investing city money directly into the city, directly into nonprofits who are, one, doing the work that's needed to be done, and two, they were here before any elected official, and they're going to be here once that elected official is gone. I've seen too many times different programs by different administrations. They're great or they're horrible, but once that elected official leaves, the program goes because the next person wants to bring their idea in. So I can tell you groups like Ubuntu Village, we've invested in them, and they are on the ground in Algiers, in the east, all over the city, helping bring down our crime numbers. Groups like Heroes in New Orleans, I've seen the money go to them, and I've seen them bring kids on field trips. I've seen them have a place in Algiers for kids who need a safe place to do homework, just to have a hot meal, to do some recreation after school. So I've seen the money go out, and I've seen crime come down, and I've seen the results. And there are so many, I don't want to start naming, I'm going to forget some, but I think that's just an example of what this council, what I've already done to take that pressure off the police and say, look, boots on the ground people, y'all know what the hot spots are. The people will trust you. The people will talk to you. I understand your program needs funding. Well, here's some of that funding. And there are checks and balances to make sure the right groups are getting that funding. You have to have certain criteria, certain tax documents, so everyone just isn't getting a check. But for those reputable groups, here's the money, and go do the work. And we don't need to see a stat sheet. When I see stats dropping in crime, that's the stats that matter to me, and it's working.
Do you think it would be helpful for, I know about both of the programs that you're mentioning, to just kind of publish that information out to the larger District C community so that we can be more supportive of those, because there could be volunteer opportunities for us to go work with Ubuntu or Heroes.
Yeah, so yes, but I think those groups, they just focus on doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying just, but they're largely focused on doing the work. All the glitz and glamour, they don't seek it. I would talk to those individuals. Hey man, once you put out something, give it to me. I put them in a newsletter saying, look what y'all doing. Look how many kids y'all helping. Look how many meals you provided. Look how. But I'm a big proponent of kind of self-policing, and if you get the people the tools to help their community in the East, in Central City, I could tell you a number of churches we giving that money to, and they've used that money to have summer camps. So what happens in summer? Usually crime spikes. You didn't have that this year. Kids were in school, not in school. Kids were in programs doing things, and I strongly believe that's with the help of the funds we've given in our 3 years on the council.
Great, thanks.
Going to home rule and sanctuary and just immigrants issues in general. We've seen, in the last couple months, like our neighbors, our friends, our family be, taken off the streets and sent away, particularly up north in our own state. How will you defend New Orleans home rule against state preemption and uphold welcoming city practices so immigrant families can safely access services?
Well, I don't believe in just deporting somebody just for the sake of it. I believe everyone deserves their fair shake of their fair shot at the American dream. So I know that's kind of federal and state and all kind of mixed in. And whatever I can do to support it, I will. And I'll tell you, it's kind of something I didn't realize. So my wife she's a full-time homeschool, stay-at-home mom now. We have 5 kids. She raises a lot of kids. So shouts out to my wife. She's doing a great job. Before she did that, she was a federal probation officer for about 5 years. And she would see when individuals are deported, they're not brought back to their hometown. So I don't think we realize just how much damage we're doing to that family or to those individuals. So if you are from, my geography is kind of escaping, like say Venezuela, that's South America, and we drop you off in Mexico or Central America, you have no idea where you are. And now you're opening the door for that individuals to be sexually trafficked, to become part of another other drug or whatever, just underworld activities. So I don't think we have people say silly stuff and believe things, but I don't think they realize just how not impactful, but yeah, I guess the word is impactful, how devastating that could be, just dropping somebody off in a foreign country without any family, any resources. So you got to put yourself in those individual shoes, and I like to do that and say, when I want to be dropped off, I don't know, somewhere that I'm not familiar with, I want to know what to do. And I think that's the case in this situation here. So definitely in support of helping those individuals stay here and not breaking up families. And that's what my kid, I would be devastated if that happened to me. So I couldn't live with myself advocating for that to happen to somebody else.
Thanks.
Earlier, you were talking a little bit about mental health in connection to the question around medical treatment post-release. And I remember when the Orleans Justice Center hearings came up, we did have Dr. Avegnu and others presenting mental health treatments and programs that they were instituting in the schools with kids. And so in terms of like non-police response, what's your plan to expand those programs that are successful around mental health and addiction crisis teams instead of, NOPD, the kind of help not handcuffs in District C?
You need to have those what's called non-police responses, or at least have a social worker guard those. I've personally seen a police, and hats off to that police officer, encounter somebody with a mental issue and just give them their space, but that police wasn't equipped on how to really handle it. They just made sure get a person in space. So you definitely need somebody to come in and say, okay, I'm trained, you keep me safe, make sure everything's around me safe, let me go in and de-escalate the situation. So if that's more funding, I'm 100% in support of that, because somebody may be having a mental episode and that shouldn't cost them their life or their freedom. So we should definitely have more, we have it now, but more investment in those social workers or mental health experts to go out there alongside the police when they have a situation like that.
Is that realistic, given like the changes to the budget and where we are in terms of, we're in a hiring freeze right now. We can't hire with the city. There's a lot of things going on, and so I'm curious if you know, you might not, if that's actually realistic to expand, or are we going to be in a place where it's like we got to hold on to what we have?
Well, I do know there's in the past we've said, okay, how many spots do you have open? We'll give you the money for those spots. If you fill them, you fill them. If you don't, give us the money back. I do know in the 4th district specifically, and the expert name escapes me, but I thought she was NOPD because she's always out there with NOPD. But no, she's a social worker who works in the 4th district, who goes out to those situations. So I've seen it happen, and I do know we fund positions, and if we can fund it, we'll find out with the budget. That's actually coming up shortly, but it definitely needs to be funded.
Great, thank you.
This is our closing, so thank you so much for joining us, Councilmember King. Any final thoughts you'd like to share with the residents of District C about what you'll deliver next term?
Well, I would say this to the residents of District C in the city. Being an elected official is not easy. You have to juggle interests of different communities, interests of the city. You have to make tough decisions. You can't tell everybody yes, you can't tell everybody no. But what you should do is always be accessible, always be honest, always be approachable, and take community input when you make those tough decisions. And I will continue to do that as the leader of District C, as an elected official. I will continue to put our kids first. I think you put those who are often overlooked at the top, everything could take care of itself. So that's my passion, whether it's me coaching in NARD, whether it's me volunteering my time at JGIC, putting our youth first, our most vulnerable population, and making sure that they're safe. And I think once you see that group taken care of, then a lot of our issues will, as you see now, kind of resolve themselves and be able to better city for everybody. And that's my commitment, to continue putting this city in a position to be the best city it can be.
Thank you very much. We enjoyed talking with you.
Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.